Now, I had absolutely no intention of covering The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, really, because, well, I thought it was just going to be a complete lick of paint on a classic and not much more, but that really is not what's happened here. The devs have really gone the extra mile, and I don't think they've done a great job of telling people what this actually is, because it's quite important in the series. Originally released in 2004 in Japan, and it finally arrived in 2011 for PSP and Windows in the rest of the regions. The original release of Trails in the Sky marked the first entry in the sub-series, so what we've got here is almost like a reboot, and my word, does it look good on Switch too. So we will look at performance, we'll look at the visuals, some of the little quirks they've gone for, but also where I see the series going, and you can clearly see the inspirations they've taken from some of the latter titles to bring about what feels like a reboot of classic JRPGs. So does this one mark a bright future, or should you brace yourself for disappointment? Well, my name is Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, now let's find out. Visually then, the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game targets 60 frames per second. Now, had they simply used the way the old engine worked, I wouldn't be overly impressed by that. In fact, in the last review I did of a Trails game, Trails Through Daybreak, I commented on the sheer lack of detail in a lot of the world, but specifically the characters, which have always looked quite good. The dated nature of those was beginning to show. Now though, I feel like there's been real attention given to those character models. They look so shiny, but they also have some shading, some shadows, and it goes further than that. There are new animations, the environments, especially things like the town, look far more detailed than they did in the past. It's not all perfect, it still has that classic JRPG geometry, where certain geometry just looks flat, the textures are a little bit but I love that they've gone for that bright, vibrant color palette, that the characters now feel like they're far more alive, because not only do you have different expressions, mouth movement, but you've also got these funny little anime quirks. It just gives it way more character than it had before, and I think it really works well. It's also one of those experiences that really shines in handheld. A little bit like when we had Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. Some of these just feel more made for a certain way, whether it's playing in docked or handheld, but here handheld just, it's a great way to play. Combat effects have also seen a number of improvements. The animations look fantastic, but it's those special S-craft moves which once again stand out to me. And the magical abilities, which use the augment system, which feels straight out of Final Fantasy VII. It reminds me so much of the old materia that I loved. Now we will of course look at Nintendo Switch 1 performance as well, so it has carried over quite well here. I'm actually surprised, but you can definitely see the difference in overall quality. With that being said, it's still an okay way of playing it, and here is the way that that performs. Gameplay-wise, it's classic. You'll be exploring towns, there's fields, dungeons, and you start out by becoming one of the Bracer's newest recruits, who are the game's main protagonist, Estelle Bright, and Joshua, her adopted brother. Having started the series after this game, it's really nice to finally get this original story, and your party grows to up to 8 different players, with a quite traditional system of carrying out jobs on mission boards in different towns, upgrading your character's gear and items at shops, and those augments that I spoke about before, whereby you can add different magics and gradually build out your augment tree. Yeah, it's good. It just feels quite refreshing to go back to basics sometimes. The localization in this version is also quite strong. Now, I'm not going to claim to understand the nuances of the original Japanese, but this isn't one of those times where I felt I was cringing hard because they'd clearly shoehorned things in that didn't make sense, but it also felt like they'd kept a lot of the meaning and intent. In fact, it's quite a funny game. You get a couple of dialogue choices, although they don't make a huge amount of difference. The fact that there's more voice acting means that you really do get to enjoy some of those responses. The interplay between the two main characters is well handled, and those voice actors do a really good job there. You can switch between both characters whenever you want, and as I said at the very beginning, it's really nice to see their hybrid combat system reach what feels like its end form. You can do basic attacks on enemies, but you can also do specials as you build up your gauge. If you're someone that enjoys that real-time combat, dodging at just the right moment affords you those special move points to then do more attacks. And if you follow up a big attack by entering turn-based combat, you'll then have a tactical advantage.
Okay. You're mine.
The active turn-based, as I'm going to call it, system allows for you to move around the environment so that you can position moves to hit multiple enemies at the same time, and doing so can often afford you critical hits, which in turn allows you to do combo moves using both characters if you're quick enough, or counter moves. It feels a little like one of the Atelier games, I think it was Riser 2 and 3, where combat began to feel much quicker. The UI and menu system as well is very slick. You've got a little diary that keeps track of everything that you've done, and of course a bestiary that logs all the monsters' weaknesses, and as you reach harder fights you will have to consider exactly what elements you're using and what magics. On the subject of difficulty, there are multiple different difficulty modes. You can change these whenever you want. It's not one of those titles that makes you feel like you've done something wrong if you choose an easier one. And overall, when it comes to the gameplay, it just feels like the reboot we needed. Now, apart from all the lovely things I've said about visual quality, the engine does still have a few clunky animations. When characters turn around, they look a little like robots at times. This is something we've seen as long as these engines have been in place, but it stands out more sharply now against some otherwise very good animations. Aside from that, the combat ones look incredible, and overall it's a really pleasing way of playing it on Switch 2. Switch 1, well, we saw how that ran. If that's good enough for you, then you'll be absolutely fine. When it comes to price, we're looking at £53.99. While I think the price seems okay, I do think it's a little expensive, especially considering we know full well there's another part coming, whereby they continue the story after a cliffhanger of an ending. With that said, you have got an excellent JRPG. It really does feel polished, and it's possibly the best that I've played from this team. It takes all of the improvements that they've made over the last decade, and it adds in some real TLC. What it doesn't do is avoid the love of the sound of its own voice, with some really heavy, slower story sections early on, but it is carried through by that relationship between the two main protagonists. You are looking at around about 80 hours if you realistically want to finish this one, and that would include a bunch of extra side content, of which there's loads. I really like the push towards the hybrid combat system. I think it's a direction they should carry on with. It gives the best of both worlds in my opinion. So there we have it. That is Trails Through Daybreak, its performance on Switch 1 and 2. My impressions as well are just really positive. I've played around 8 hours of what I've just mentioned is around 80, so no way can we score this video. But you know full well I've played and reviewed most of the other games in the series at this point, and I'm saying quite confidently this is my favourite, if not top 2. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this. Will you be picking it up? Have you already bought it? And just a big thanks to all of you that enjoy the content. For all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya!